Welcome to this Java Break with Basis. My name is Nico Spence. I'm the Chairman and CEO of Basis International, and I'm very pleased to present this first of a series of customer successes with BBX. Today I'm going to be joined by Alex Castellano, who's going to be on hand to answer your questions to tell us how ASCI delivered a radical facelift to their business application. Let's look at the session agenda. It's a radical success story. We'll tell you a bit more about ASCI of Miami, the company background, the challenge they faced, and the solution they came up with. We'll talk about the implementation plan of that solution, and then the results. And then we'll take your questions. So let's begin. I'll give you some background to ASCI of Miami. The vertical market solution that they deliver is software solutions for international trade. They were founded in 1981. The system caters for custom brokers, importers, freight forwarders, and carriers. They're based in Miami, Florida, with clients across the US and Puerto Rico, and they have over 300 installations. These installations run a mix of character and GUI Visual Pro 5, so the option is there for the customer to switch between character or GUI mode. So what is their challenge? They wanted to add new user interface functionality and new features to their vertical market solution. Their application was looking somewhat dated, more of a Windows 95 and Windows 98 type look and feel. They wanted to take advantage of new feature, new function, grids, the MDI framework, etc. And the decision was to move from Visual Pro 5 to BBJ and take advantage of Barista's rapid application development framework to modernize the legacy GUI app in a heartbeat while adding tons of new built-in features and functions. So let's talk about the implementation plan. The first part is to convert to BBJ. And what they did is they followed the steps as outlined in the Basis documentation. So if you go to our homepage, type in convert to BBJ in the search box, you'll find a link to the convert to BBJ. And there's a short link for you, should you decide to have a look at that yourselves. And it's a pretty straightforward process. Then they moved on to implement Barista. They took a two-phased approach, each with clearly defined goals and resultant benefits to them and to their clients. Let's have a quick look at that convert to BBJ document. Let's see what it contains. So I'm just going to the Basis website, and I'm going to say convert to BBJ in the search. The first item that comes up is converting to BBJ from earlier versions of Basis products. We click on that. Here's the document. Now there are only really three steps that one has to be concerned with. First is to run the underscore keyword utility. Of course, if you haven't used any reserved words, the new reserved words we've added to BBJ, then you wouldn't have to do this. And in fact, this is quite interesting over here. If you read this piece, it says that some of the changes it makes might highlight existing program errors. And in fact, that's most often the case. We find that there's code that might in Pro 5 pass the compiler, the parser, but in actual fact it doesn't make any sense from a logic viewpoint. So you might have a comma ERR equals and a line number, but instead it's actually doing an assignment to the variable ERR, which of course you can't do, but Pro 5 doesn't mark that as a syntax error. It allows that code to be input, but in actual fact won't operate as you logically might expect it would. So that first step must be run, importantly, on your Pro 5 tokens, and it just really does a search and replace. And you can go and change the words that are used to replace those reserved words by manually editing the data file that accompanies underscore keyword, this underscore keyword.dat file. And then step 2 is also not necessarily required, in that BBJ will run your Pro 5 tokenized programs, or it'll run ASCII code. But we do recommend that you recompile your programs for BBJ using the BBJ CPL program. It will make the programs load faster than if you were running Pro 5 tokens. And of course it'll also pick up any other syntax errors, because the syntax error checking in BBJ CPL will be a bit stricter than standard Pro 5. Lastly, step 3 is just to review some notes, some warnings, some considerations. There are 29 of them, but the only one that's really important for Visual Pro 5 is this option number 24, where we tell you that BBJ uses the ASCII resource files, the .arcs, instead of the .brcs. And if you go and have a look at converting resource file formats, you can automatically convert your binary resource files into ASCII using a single command line. So using this resbuild command line, you can convert ***brcs to ***arcs, and if you don't want to bother to change your code, which is referencing .brcs, just push into another directory and use the same brc suffix, and it'll change into ASCII even though it has the brc suffix. So, pretty straightforward. We encourage you to review this, but as in ASCII of Miami's case, not a particularly difficult task, and they found very little effort in making that move. So having moved to BBJ, they were ready to begin their phase 1 of implementing Barista's functionality. So they moved the existing menus into Barista to give them a more modern, more consistent user experience, and to leverage the multiple document interface, the MDI framework of Barista. This allows for very quick and easy and efficient navigation through several open ASCII windows, increasing the user's productivity. The ability to have multiple screens open, be able to have the MDI framework control all of that, was a significant benefit to their users. They also had the search and sort inquiry windows, the ability to create custom queries by doing filtering, by excluding certain columns, and filtering on particular values, and exporting those to Excel or PDF, for example. That empowered the user to give them access to the data to make more data-driven decisions. Next was to embrace the power of DocOut. Barista's document output subsystem gives you the ability to output reports to PDF, XML, XLS, HTML, CSV, and Google Doc formats. And this again equips the users with some self-service reporting choices. Ability to email and fax those as well from the document queue. And DocOut also delivers built-in report archiving in a choice of formats. And then finally, the power of Barista's user-defined look and feel for tables and forms allowed ASCII to customize some of those to just be the way that the user wanted them. Let's have a look at some of those screenshots of the old and the new. So here's the old ASCII main menu system. So as you can see, a little dated, still GUI and functional, but with older style tool buttons and a single document interface environment. And this, by comparison with the Barista framework, we immediately get the ability to have our top level menu items on the top and then lower level menu items on the bottom, ability to run history processes, in other words, the past processes that the user might have run, gives them notifications. For example, if you try to open up a record that was locked, you can actually register for a notification and be told when that record becomes available to you. And across the top, we have our tool buttons that are applicable to the particular window that has focus. This next screen is a good busy screenshot of the logbook maintenance with a ton of controls on the screen. But by comparison, if one looks at the new Barista MDI framework, you can see these tool buttons now are active across the top of the MDI as well as on the actual child window. And in circumstances where the entry item is some sort of code, the resultant description is also printed next to the selection. So a lot more user-friendly interface that can also still be driven by keyboard entry as well as mouse entry. The quick entry form, as it suggests, has a ton of information on it, but you'll see the ability here to have subsidiary additional options that can be quickly run from the quick entry form. The invoice header detail, in the old format, ASCII didn't take advantage of any of the grid functionality, which was rather complex to do in Visual Pro 5. So they had a header form over here, and the detail form which had a ton of different controls that made it look grid-like. But by moving to Barista, we had the ability for a header detail form with the header information across the top and a subsidiary grid down below for the detailed information, giving much easier navigation for the user, ability to go backwards and forwards and add new lines in an incremental fashion with no limit to how many lines would be entered on a particular page by utilizing the scroll functionality. Let's move on to reporting. The print log report, the old report, was a fairly complex form of report parameters that were being captured. And the new format is the optioned entry form in Barista. And the really nice part about this, you'll notice across the top here in this grid, we have the last process, the last selected options. If one simply clicks on this, all of the form information would be pre-filled out. And in fact, that can be saved and given a particular name. So if you're running this report several times with several different options, you can actually give it a name. The user is able to do this, give it a name, and save those various options, those parameters that they wish to use to run the report with a particular description. And next time they come in, they can simply run that process by clicking on the options within the grid. So let's talk a bit about embracing the power of dockout. What is the process? It's a two-part process. First part is to convert the report capture parameters into a Barista options entry form. One of the key benefits of that is, as I described in the previous screen, where you can actually save the options and give it a name and use that as a short form subsidiary report. The next point has more programming concepts to be applied, converting print at statements into BBJ vector assignments, and to call the dockout program thereafter. The first part, the converting of the report capture parameters into a Barista options entry form, is optional. And there's a tutorial available to you for the second part. That's available at links.basis.com, dockout tutorial. And a conversion for ASCII right now, that they've run through it a few times, it takes them somewhere between 3 to 4 hours to complete both parts of this conversion process. And of course, the benefits gained thereafter is that all of that reporting information can now be emailed, faxed, produced in PDF, XML, XLS formats. All right, so let's quickly go and find that dockout tutorial. Go back to our web page. Type in dockout tutorial into the search box, and the first hit is dockout. And here's the tutorial. Now, if you wish to run dockout from outside of the Barista MDI, then you would use the dockout object. So there are a couple of basics that we cover, important pieces about setting up your column headings and the headings of the form itself, of the printout itself. And then we talk about the BBJ vector. There's some initialization that has to be done. But here's the meat of it. This out vector is the main vector containing the majority of the report data. And here's where we take our old print statement and replace it with populating the output vector. And there's also information about how you can set up break vectors and header vectors, as well as total vectors and special formatting. If you wish to do bold, italics, right justify, left justify, etc., you would give that value into the output vector. So here's a simple interface of one of the ASCII reports, the sales journal report. Here we're putting in various report parameters to drive the report. And here's the new one. Notice now that this is using the Barista's options entry form. And we have our beginning reference number, ending reference number, search capability, and also the last process run. And this is where we might want to save off various report parameters and give them a name, and then simply rerun those particular reports. And here's what the output looks like. So much like any other tabular type report, dockout is perfectly suited for that. And the user has all control that they require as you decide to give it to them, to save it in PDF format, to output it to Excel, or to fax or email that document. And of course, it will archive that document. So all of that hard work is done for you. With that simple process of a couple of hours of work, we can convert a report into a PDF, Excel, and an archived report for the user to use at a later date. Another example is our country code listing report. This is the old format of the report, and then the new format. So again, similar paradigm, and then similar output. A pretty simple report, but a simple master file listing. Let's have a look at some of the code behind the scenes. As we saw in the tutorial, we needed to populate the output vector. Let's have a look at the code that is behind one of the ASCII reports. Let's have a look at this code in the IDE. So here we have the IDE open, and we have this program that is producing the output to the dockout. And you'll notice that they've got rid of their line numbers, and they've used the underscore labels program to also get rid of the labels. And by doing so here, you'll see where it might have gone go to 3055, it'll replace that with go to L3055. So the important part to look at is, here's our old statement, here's our print at statement, and now we've just got some code in to give a description that's more meaningful as a variable name to those various values like BD $1,7. Here it is. Here's the corresponding entry. That's the reference number. And we're populating the output vector with the reference number, with the invoice date, invoice type, and the customer ID. So it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Once we've done all of that, and we've got our breaks and our break vectors, etc., right at the end, the last thing we need to do is run the program that'll actually process that vector. So populating that and then previewing that to the screen and giving the output choices to the various formats that we might require. So pretty straightforward, powerful functionality. Let's get back to the presentation. So what is the status of phase 1 for ASCI of Miami? They've completed several ASCI powered by Barista installations. They've converted their first install from Character to Barista, so that was a bit of a leap for them, for the users, to go from Character to GUI, but they're liking the change. And the second install went from Visual Pro 5 Graphical to Barista. They certainly said that they've liked the snappy new GUI interface and the new features that they have. The next conversion will be another Visual Pro 5 to BBJ Barista, which is due later this month. And here's the verdict. As Alex says, they're confident that Barista will meet their technology requirements to allow them to meet their customer needs well into the future. They love how the user interface works and the way Barista moves. It's very fast. And they're glad that they made the move and are anxious to upgrade all their customers to the new ASCI powered by Barista solution. So what's phase 2? Phase 2 is to commit additional programmers and quality control personnel to speed up the conversion, bring all phase 1 elements across to the remaining ASCI application modules, that's the export procedures, the warehouse procedures, AMS, and accounting, and to use iReport for invoice, delivery order, bill of lading, and airwayable forms. Some are already complete, some of them already been moved to iReport, and they'll also then convert all data entry programs, taking full advantage of Barista's efficiencies. What are the benefits of Barista? Faster application customization and enhancements. After all, tools can make us more efficient and more productive. iReport eases the form and report customization challenge, giving better, faster and more affordable customer service. What about the Barista learning curve? Well, in Alex's words, he did not find the learning curve so difficult. Most of his staff was experienced working with this kind of a development tool, and the online training sections and online tutorials helped them become familiar with the basics of Barista. What are the lessons learned? There is synergism of technology and experience at ASCI and at Basis, and they're both solid and future-proof. Barista and the underlying Java-powered BBJ delivers the broad ecosystem to address the ever-changing technology landscape, allowing Basis to take care of the detail that otherwise ASCI would have to do themselves with hand-rolled code. It's cloud and mobile technology ready, so those Barista apps can run in the cloud, can run on mobile devices, and now the clients can deploy on their choice of operating system and or browser. And running on a choice of hardware and environments allows one to perhaps introduce Linux into the environment, be a less expensive choice than perhaps Windows. And of course, should their Mac start coming into the organization via the CEO's desktop, those can also be running the same GUI application in a Mac look and feel. Strong support team has been at the ready for ASCI, and I think this is probably one of the most gratifying feedbacks that Alex has given us, as they've seen the benefits of the Barista tool improve over time. Dramatic performance improvements. Have a look at the Java Break Best of BBJ 12 Part 2 to see how those performance improvements improve the SQL processing within Barista, because it's data dictionary based. SQL is a key feature of Barista's usage. And additional functionality added over the years. There's numerous Java breaks and Basis Advantage articles that talk about new Barista enhancements, plumbing Barista into custom BBJ, and of course the new dialog wizard that allows you to create very custom code and then plumb that easily back into the Barista framework. And more recently, we've added improved debugging support, made it easier to debug your Barista generated code. So what's ahead for ASCI? Looking ahead, Alex says he sees many things that will result in a better product for their clients. The rapid development, standard programming routines and core points, It will make it easier for them to create new forms and applications and to organize and maintain their database system. There'll be additional basis tools and utilities that can be used, the BB Jasper viewer for iReport, for example, and they're using SPROX already for some of those iReports for access to the data. And they'll be implementing Barista's role-based security feature for their more sophisticated customers with greater number of users and different roles. So the role-based security, as this example shows, you can actually set up access to particular fields in a data file, either being in view or modification mode, and therefore restrict and audit changes that might have taken place to your database. And Alex feels that their larger user counts are going to want that sort of functionality in the future. So in summary, we've covered the background for ASCI, the challenge that they faced, the solution they've adopted, and looked at the implementation plan. They didn't bite off everything at once. They took it in digestible, bite-sized chunks, and they're already seeing results from their clients. To summarize then, the ASCI powered by Barista solution is a more powerful solution with more feature and more function, delivered with a minimal amount of effort. Before we take your questions, if you have success stories, your own success stories to share, please contact your Basis account manager and we can include you in this series. A reminder again that our Basis TechCon 2013 is going to be in Las Vegas, Nevada again next year. Mark your calendars. TechCon itself will run from May 13 to 15 with training on May 16 and 17. We'll be back at the Renaissance Hotel in Las Vegas, an off-strip, non-gaming hotel, but with very easy access to the strip. Just a monorail stop away. Right, question and answer time. You give us the questions and Alex and I will answer them.